Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair as the bridge shuddered under another plasma barrage. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the consoles like frantic heartbeats.
"Status!"
she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Lieutenant Raj Patel, her tactical officer, wiped sweat from his brow, fingers flying over the holographic display. "Shields at 40%, Captain. That Kragath cruiser is pounding us. Another hit like that and we're venting atmosphere." His tone was steady, but his eyes betrayed the strain. He'd been with her since the first skirmish on Vega Prime, always the calm one in the storm. Elena nodded, jaw set. The USS Vanguard was no capital ship, just a frigate, tough but outmatched against the hulking alien behemoth closing in. The Kragath Empire had caught them off guard in the asteroid field, their boarding pods already launching like angry hornets. Helm evasive pattern Delta 7. Get us behind that big rock at bearing 240. Raj, reroute auxiliary power to forward shields. We take one more hit, we fire back with everything we've got. The ship groaned as thrusters fired, twisting through the debris. Sparks erupted from a nearby panel, and Ensign Lila Chen, the young engineer at Ops, cursed under her breath. "Ma'am, the port nacelle's taking strain. Containment fields are flickering. If we push her harder, we might lose impulse." Lila's hands trembled slightly. She was the newest to the crew, fresh from the academy, her caution a counter to Elena's boldness. "Risk it," Elena said, leaning forward. "Better a limp ship than a dead one." She trusted Lila's smarts. The kid had jury-rigged their sensors back on Titan to detect stealth drones, but caution wouldn't save them now. The view screen showed the Kragath vessel, a jagged mass of spines and glowing vents, its weapons ports charging for another volley. Elena's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but humans didn't fold easy. Not out here, not after the long haul from Sol. A direct hit rocked them sideways, the inertial dampeners whining in protest. Consoles flickered, and for a heart-stopping second, gravity cut out. Elena floated briefly, then slammed back as it stabilized. "Damage report. Shields down to 20, Raj reported, his voice tight. "Hull breach on deck 3, sealing it now." He glanced at Elena, the unspoken question hanging. Abandoned ship? But she shook her head, eyes locked on the screen. The asteroid loomed closer. A pitted behemoth that might just be their shield. Lila piped up from her station.
"Captain, I've got an idea."
The asteroid's got metallic ores, high in iridium. If we vent plasma from the exhaust ports, we could ionize the field around it, create a makeshift EMP burst. It won't take out their ship, but it might scramble their targeting long enough for us to flank. Elena turned, a spark of hope igniting. Risky, untested, pure human grit. "Do it, Raj, cover her. Helm on my mark." The bridge hummed with urgency, the crew moving as one. Outside, the stars wheeled, cold and indifferent, as the Vanguard dove toward cover. Lila's fingers flew across the console, rerouting power from auxiliary systems to the exhaust ports. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but her voice stayed steady. Plasma vents priming. Ionization field building. 30 seconds to optimal charge. Elena gripped the arm of her chair, the asteroid filling the view screen like a jagged promise. The enemy ship's sensors would pick up the maneuver soon. They always did. "Helm, adjust course 0.2. Keep us in their blind spot." Raj leaned over Lila's shoulder, his cautious eyes scanning the readouts. "That's a lot of juice you're pulling. If the field destabilizes, we could fry our own nav systems." "Won't happen," Lila shot back, witty edge cutting through the tension. "Trust the math, Raj. Or at least trust me." The bridge vibrated as the Vanguard's engines thrummed, diving toward the asteroid's shadow. Alarms blared softly in the background. Proximity warnings from the pursuer, a sleek alien cruiser twice their size, its weapons ports glowing with restrained fury. Elena watched the tactical display, the red blip of the enemy closing fast. They'd been hounded for weeks, ever since the first skirmish over Epsilon Eridani. Human expansion into the neutral zones had irked the coalition, and now this hunter was their response. No grand invasion, just a persistent thorn testing their resolve. 10 seconds, Lila announced. "Firing plasma now." A low rumble shook the deck as superheated gas erupted from the stern, invisible tendrils wrapping around the asteroid's metallic core. Sparks of ionized particles danced across the view screen, turning the rock into a makeshift capacitor. The enemy ship adjusted, its targeting lock snapping toward the Vanguard. A warning chirp echoed, "Missiles inbound." EMP burst. Lila slammed the release. The asteroid pulsed, a silent wave of electromagnetic fury rippling outward. The enemy's missiles veered wildly, detonating harmlessly against the rock's surface in blooms of fire. The cruiser itself shuddered, lights flickering as systems scrambled. "Flank them," Elena ordered. "Full burn to port." The Vanguard surged, engines roaring as it slipped behind the asteroid's curve. Raj patched in auxiliary shields, buying them seconds. Their weapons are offline, 40% at best. But they're adapting fast. Lila grinned, wiping her brow. "Told you, human improv beats their fancy tech every time." But the victory felt fragile. Scans showed the asteroid fracturing from the energy discharge, chunks breaking free and tumbling toward them. One grazed the hull with a metallic screech, shaking the bridge. "Damage minimal," Raj reported, his brave facade cracking just a bit. "But if we don't clear this debris field soon, we'll be picking pieces of ourselves out of the vacuum." Elena nodded, eyes narrowing on the pursuing blip as it stabilized. The gamble had bought them time, not safety. Plot an exit vector through the rings. Let's see if they can keep up. As the ship weaved through the floating wreckage, the crew held their breath, the cold expanse outside a reminder that survival was always one clever twist away from disaster. The Endurance shuddered as another chunk of rock clipped the dorsal fin, sparks erupting across the view screen like fleeting fireworks. Elena gripped the armrests, her knuckles whitening, while Raj punched coordinates into the nav console with frantic precision. "Rings ahead, Captain. Dense as a beehive, our best shot to shake them." Behind them, the alien pursuer, a sleek, obsidian wedge humming with stolen human tech, fired a probing laser, slicing through a drifting boulder and sending shards spiraling toward the hull. The bridge alarms wailed, red lights pulsing in rhythm with Elena's heartbeat. She leaned forward, voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "Evasive pattern Delta. Thread the needle, Raj. No heroics, just survival." The ship banked hard, engines thrumming as it plunged into Saturn's outer rings. Ice and silicate particles glittered in the floodlights. A deadly ballet of collision risks. Mia, the engineer, tucked into her station below decks, patched through on comms, her voice crackling with strain. "Shields at 60%. That last hit fried a relay. Rerouting power now. But if we take another direct, we're venting Atmo." Elena nodded to herself, picturing Mia's oil-streaked face and the makeshift braces holding the engine room together. Humans didn't build for perfection. They built for fixes. For that one improvisation that turned the tide. "Copy, keep her flying. What's our window?" 2 minutes tops before the debris overwhelms us." Raj cut in, sweat beading on his brow. He was the brave one. The pilot who'd volunteered for this suicide run to the outer colonies, but now his fingers trembled on the yoke. A massive ice slab loomed ahead, fracturing under the ship's wake, and he yanked the controls left. The Endurance groaned, metal protesting as it skimmed the edge. The alien ship burst through the ring's fringe, its weapons charging with an ominous whine that echoed through the sensors. It was faster, cleaner, tech reverse-engineered from the wrecks they'd left in Earth's defense. But it lacked the grit of a crew that had stared down invasion fleets. Elena's mind raced. They'd absorbed the first barrage back at the asteroid, storing the energy in the experimental capacitors, then unleashed it in a pulse that cracked the rock apart. Bought time, yes, but now the fragments were their cage. "They're matching our vector," Raj said, teeth gritted. "Firing again." The beam lanced out, vaporizing a swath of particles and superheating the air in its path. The Endurance twisted, but not fast enough. The shockwave buffeted them, rattling tools from their clips. Mia's voice spiked over the line. "Hull breach in Bay 3. Sealing it, hold on." Elena unstrapped, staggering to the damage board. Red warnings blinked, integrity dropping, oxygen reserves ticking down. The cost was real now. Lives, not just abstract stakes. She slammed her fist on the console. "Raj, drop decoys. Everything we've got. Make them think we're breaking apart." He hesitated a split second, then nodded, launching the jury-rigged flares, old mining charges laced with plasma. They bloomed in the rings like false explosions, mimicking a dying ship. The alien vessel veered, sensors fooled by the chaos, buying them a precious gap. But the debris closed in. A fist-sized meteoroid punched through the viewport shielding, cracking the polycarbon with a sharp report. Frost spiderwebbed across the glass, and the bridge temperature plummeted. Elena's breath fogged the air as she barked, "Mia's status?" "Breached section secure," came the reply, laced with coughs. "But we're losing pressure. Need to punch out or we're done." Raj's eyes met Elena's, a silent pact forming. Human ingenuity wasn't about matching their firepower. It was about outthinking the machine. "Captain, the ring's gravity well, there's a shepherd moon slingshotting particles. If we ride it?" She saw it. A risky dive, using the moon's pull to catapult them clear while the alien tangled in the wake. No guarantees, but sitting still meant death. "Do it. Full burn on my mark." The ship dove, engines roaring defiance against the icy storm. The alien ship recovered, closing fast, but the rings fought back, chunks battering its hull, slowing its pursuit. Elena held her breath as the shepherd moon swelled on the screens, a pitted guardian in the void. Mark. Thrust hit like a hammer, slinging them free in a blaze of acceleration. The Endurance arrowed toward open space, debris field shrinking behind. But scans pinged. The alien craft limped, damaged but not out, trailing plasma from a fresh scar. They'd escaped for now. The cold stars ahead whispered of more twists, but the crew had woven through the worst. Elena gripped the armrests as the Endurance shuddered through the final bursts of acceleration, the inertial dampeners whining in protest. Alarms still flickered on the console, remnants of the debris field they'd just clawed out of, but the immediate threat, the alien pursuer, had fallen back into the Saturnian ring's chaotic embrace. She glanced at Marcus in the co-pilot's seat, his fingers dancing over the nav controls with the steady rhythm of someone who'd stared down worse odds. "Damage report," she said, her voice cutting through the hum of cooling systems. Marcus didn't look up. "Hull integrity at 87%. That last graze from the ring fragment punched a microfracture in the port nacelle. Not critical, but we're venting trace plasma. Engineering's on it." From the comm station, Lila leaned forward, her brow furrowed under the glow of multiple screens. "And the bogey? It's limping, all right. Sensors show erratic power signatures. But it's not dead. Vectoring a pursuit course, low burn to conserve whatever they've got left." Elena nodded, the weight of command settling like an old coat. The crew was down to 4 now. Her, Marcus the unflappable pilot, Lila the sharp-eyed sensor tech, and Thomas in engineering, who hadn't surfaced since the escape burn. They'd started this survey mission with a full complement, but the alien ambush in the outer rings had trimmed that number brutally. No time for grief. Survival demanded focus. "Options?" she asked, eyes on the starfield ahead, where the gas giant's curve faded into the black. Marcus tapped a holographic display, projecting a 3D map of the system. "We push for the outer belt. Asteroids could give us cover. But they'll close the gap in 12 hours if we don't improvise. Fuel's tight after that slingshot. Another high-G maneuver might cook the engines." Lila interjected, her voice laced with that cautious edge she always brought to briefings. "Or we hail them. Probe for intent. If they're not outright hostile, no." Elena's response was flat, born from the memory of their last encounter, the alien ship's weapons lancing through the dark, silent, and merciless. "We assume malice until proven otherwise. Thomas, status?" The engineer's voice crackled over the intercom, gruff and oil-streaked. "Patching the nacelle. Give me 20 minutes. But Cap, that thing's tech is adaptive. Scans from the fight show it regenerating. We need a edge, something they can't predict." The ship lurched slightly as a residual vibration from the rings propagated through the frame. Elena stood, pacing the cramped bridge, her mind racing through contingencies. Human ships like the Endurance were built for endurance, not flash. Modular designs meant for deep space hauls, with redundancies layered like onion skins. But against an unknown xenocraft, it was grit versus whatever alien arrogance drove them. "All right," she said, stopping at the central console. "Marcus, plot a micro-jump to the Enceladus flyby. Use the moon's gravity well for a deflection assist. Buy us time without burning dry." He raised an eyebrow but complied, fingers flying. "Risky. Tidal stresses could shear us if the timing's off by seconds. Better than a straight chase." She turned to Lila. "You, eyes on their emissions. Any pattern in their region tech, we mimic it. Reverse engineer on the fly." Lila hesitated, then nodded, pulling up spectral data. "On it. If it's energy-based, our fab unit might whip up a counter-emitter. Ugly, but doable." The plan coalesced in snippets: dodge, adapt, outlast. No grand heroics, just the quiet ingenuity that had carried humanity to the stars. As the Endurance banked toward the icy moon, Elena felt the familiar pull of uncertainty. Not fear, but the sharp clarity it brought. Thomas's voice broke in again. Patch holding. But Cap, I've got an idea for that alien. Their hull's modulating frequencies to self-repair. What if we flood their spectrum with noise? Jam it like a bad radio signal. Elena's lips twitched in a grim smile. Do it. Make it hurt. The ship dove into the moon's shadow, engines purring low as Enceladus loomed. A frozen world scarred by geysers. Its subsurface ocean a tantalizing mystery they'd never cracked today. Scans lit up. The alien vessel emerging from the rings, a sleek wedge of obsidian hull scarred but closing. They're accelerating, Lila reported, tension threading her words. ETA to intercept 8 hours. Marcus adjusted course, the Endurance skimming the moon's thin atmosphere, plumes of vapor blooming against the viewport like fleeting ghosts. The maneuver worked. The gravity tug altered their trajectory just enough, slinging them toward the system's edge while the pursuer miscalculated, veering wide to avoid a subsurface plume. But Triumph soured fast. A proximity alert screamed secondary contacts. Not one alien ship, but fragments. Drones, perhaps, or decoys fanning out from the main craft like angry wasps. They're deploying hunters, Lila said, her voice tight. Small, fast. Arming countermeasures? Elena slammed the alert panel. All tubes fire. Marcus, evasive pattern Delta. Hug the moon's horizon. Torpedoes streaked from the Endurance bays, primitive but reliable, detonating in blooms of plasma that shredded the lead drone. Shrapnel pinged off their shields, a metallic rain. One hunter slipped through, latching onto the hull with a thud that vibrated the deck. Thomas, Elena barked. Got it. EMP burst. Thomas's fingers flew across the console, initiating the EMP sequence with a grim nod. The burst erupted from the hull-mounted emitters, a silent wave that rippled outward like an invisible shock front. The latched hunter convulsed, its spindly limbs sparking as circuits fried, then it peeled away into the void, tumbling end over end toward the moon's shadowed craters. Clean kill, Tomas reported, wiping sweat from his brow. His voice carried the steady calm of a man who'd jury-rigged too many systems in his career to panic now. Elena exhaled, her shoulders easing a fraction. Status on the rest? Lila's screens flickered with telemetry. 2 more inbound, but the torpedoes bought us time. Shields at 70%, holding, but they're adaptive. Next hit might calibrate right through. Marcus gripped the helm, the ship groaning under his tight maneuvers. They skimmed the lunar horizon, using the rocky silhouette to mask their thermal signature. They're herding us toward the debris field. Smart bastards. The Endurance shuddered as another drone grazed their flank, its energy lance scoring a shallow gash along the port nacelle. Alarms wailed briefly before Elena silenced them with a sharp tap. No time for distractions. She scanned the tactical overlay. The alien fragments were closing, their formations precise, almost predatory. Humans had built the Endurance on grit and salvage, not elegance, but out here, against tech that bent physics like putty, grit might not cut it. Options? She asked, eyes on the captain's chair, empty since the ambush started. She'd stepped up hours ago when the first shots lit up the black. Thomas leaned forward. We could vent the auxiliary tanks, fake a coolant leak, draw them in close, then hit him with the railgun at point blank. Risky, but our ammo's low on long range. Lila shot him a look. And if they scan the bluff? We're down to emergency reserves already. Marcus snorted, banking hard to evade a probing scan. Better than dancing till our tanks run dry. Elena? She weighed it, the weight of 4 lives and the colony's last supply run pressing in. The moon's edge loomed large now, craters pockmarking the gray expanse like forgotten scars. Do it, vent on my mark. Lila, prep the gun. Marcus, get us into that debris cluster, make it look desperate. The plan unfolded in terse bursts. Thomas triggered the vents, and false plumes of vapor billowed from the Endurance's side, glowing faintly against the stars. The drones adjusted, vectors tightening like wolves scenting blood. One peeled off to flank, the other dove straight in, weapons priming with a telltale hum that echoed through the sensors. They're buying it, Lila whispered, her fingers hovering over the firing sequence. The ship plunged into the debris field, chunks of ancient satellite wreckage tumbling past viewports in a chaotic ballet. Marcus wove through them masterfully, the Endurance's thrusters flaring in controlled bursts. A fragment clipped their wing, sending a jolt through the deck, but they held course. "Now," Elena said. The lead drone surged forward, lance charging. Then the railgun spoke. A hypersonic slug tore from the barrel, propelled by coils that whined in protest. It punched through the drone's core, erupting out the other side in a spray of molten alloy. The second drone reacted, firing wildly, but the debris turned its shot erratic. Marcus rolled the ship, and Thomas's follow-up burst from the point defense lasers stitched across its hull. It exploded in a brief fireball, shrapnel scattering like confetti. Silence fell on the bridge, broken only by the hum of cooling systems. Lila slumped back, rubbing her temples. Clear for now. But the main ship's still out there, cloaked, probably watching. Elena nodded, staring at the drifting wrecks. The supply crates in the hold felt heavier, a fragile lifeline for the outposts back home. They'd bought time, but the cost gnawed. Shields flickering, one nacelle venting real plasma now. Humans didn't win wars with superior firepower. They won by turning scraps into surprises. "Plot a course for the relay buoy," she ordered. "We signal the fleet, tell them we're not done yet." Elena gripped the armrests as the ship lurched into motion, the inertial dampeners whining under the strain. The relay buoy lay just beyond the debris field, a silent sentinel blinking in the void, but every sensor ping carried the weight of unseen eyes. "Tomas, keep those point defense guns hot," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. "Lila, scan for any whisper of that cloaked bastard. We can't afford another surprise." Tomas nodded from his station, fingers dancing over the controls. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his eyes stayed sharp, the wiry engineer's focus unbreakable. "Guns primed, Captain. I've rerouted power from the secondary batteries. Should give us an extra punch if it decloaks close." He paused, glancing at the flickering shield readout. "But that nacelle's bleeding plasma like a stuck pig. One good hit there and we're done." Lila's screens glowed with false positives, the clutter of wreckage masking potential threats. She chewed her lip, the cautious analyst in her warring with the need for speed. "Nothing solid yet, but the buoy's signal is weak. Interference from the fight, maybe. If we push the engines, we could shave 2 minutes off the approach." Her voice held an edge, not fear, but the raw calculation of someone who'd seen too many close calls. "Do it," Elena decided, leaning forward. The supply crates in the hold, vital meds, tools, food for the outposts, rattled faintly through the hull, a reminder that failure here meant colonies starving in the dark. Humans had clawed their way to the stars on grit alone, not godlike tech, and she'd be damned if this run ended them. The ship accelerated, weaving through the drifting hulks like a needle through storm-tossed waves. Alarms chirped suddenly. Lila's scan lit up with an anomaly, a ripple in the sensor wash. "Cloak's flickering. It's matching our vector coming in from starboard." Thomas spun his chair. "Range?" "Closing fast, 30 seconds to weapons lock." Lila's hands flew, isolating the signature. Elena's mind raced. The buoy was so close, its relay antenna now visible as a skeletal arm against the stars. But the enemy ship was a ghost turning solid, its hull shimmering into view, like heat haze over asphalt. Direct fire would shred them. Evasion meant overshooting the buoy and losing their shot at the fleet. No, they needed something smarter, a human trick pulled from the junk drawer of desperation. "Divert to the debris," Elena snapped. "Use the wrecks as cover. Thomas, prep the cargo bay doors. We're dumping decoys." Thomas's eyes widened, but he moved without question. "Aye, loading the spare hull plating and those busted sensor pods. It'll look like a full debris burst." Lila plotted the evasive, the ship banking hard, thrusters firing in staccato bursts. The enemy vessel loomed larger, its energy weapons charging with a telltale hum that vibrated through the comms. A lance of plasma grazed their shields, buckling them another notch. The nacelle sparked visibly now, venting blue fire into space. They plunged into the heart of the debris field, the viewport filling with twisted metal and frozen gases. "Doors opening," Thomas announced, and the ship shuddered as payloads ejected, plates tumbling end over end, sensor ghosts broadcasting fake signatures. The decoys bloomed like a false explosion, drawing the enemy's fire in a frenzy of shots that lit the void. Elena held her breath, the bridge alive with the scent of ozone and sweat. The buoy rushed up, its docking port yawning open. "Link us in now." Lila slammed the connect, the ship's systems meshing with a jolt. Data streamed out, coordinates, status, the desperate plea for reinforcements. But the enemy wasn't fooled for long. Its cloaking field dropped fully, weapons recharging for the kill shot. Thomas fired a desperate barrage, lasers stitching across the aggressor's flank, but it shrugged them off, advancing relentlessly. Shields at 20%. The nacelle's alarm screamed. Then Lila's voice cut through, fierce and inspired. "Captain, the buoy's got emergency protocols, overloaded relay burst. We trigger it, it could blind them long enough for us to jump." Elena saw it. The buoy's core, a fusion pulse meant for distress signals, weaponized in a heartbeat. Risky. The backlash might fry their own nav systems, but it was their edge. "Hit it, Thomas, cover fire!" He unleashed everything, the guns chattering in a defiant roar. Lila initiated the overload, the buoy humming to life, building to a crescendo. The enemy ship fired again, the shot slamming home, but too late. The relay erupted in a spherical wave of electromagnetic fury, washing over the battlefield like a solar flare. Sensors went white. The bridge lights flickered, emergency reds pulsing. The enemy vessel twisted, its systems crippled, drifting blindly into the debris. Elena exhaled, the ship pulling free from the buoy's grasp. Jump prepped. We're out. But as the stars streaked into warp lines, the nacelle's damage readout climbed, irreparable without a yard. The outposts would get their supplies, the fleet their warning, but the cost etched deep. One more scar on a ship that carried humanity's stubborn spark. Elena gripped the armrests as the warp field stabilized, the stars snapping back into focus on the viewscreen. The Resolute's bridge hummed with the low growl of strained engines, red warning icons pulsing across her console like angry fireflies. She glanced at the engineering readout, nacelle integrity at 42%, climbing toward critical. "Status, Chief." Lila's voice crackled over the intercom, laced with that unflappable calm she wore like armor. "Holding, Captain. But if we push her harder than emergency thrust, she'll shake herself apart. We've got microfractures in the warp coils. One bad ripple and we're space dust." The crew exchanged looks, the weight of it settling in. Marcus, at tactical, wiped sweat from his brow, his fingers dancing over controls. Sensors clear for now. That overload bought us distance, but the swarm's regrouping. "ET to the outposts, 6 hours if we limp." Elena nodded, her mind racing through options. The outposts, fragile footholds on the edge of contested space, needed those supplies. Med packs, fusion cells, ammo crates stacked in the hold like a desperate lifeline. Without them, the colonists there would fold under the next raid. But the Resolute was no freighter. She was a fighter, scarred from too many skirmishes, her hull a patchwork of welds and prayers. "Plot a micro-jump chain," Elena ordered, leaning forward. "Short hops, conserve the coils. And route auxiliary power to shields, expect company." Marcus punched in the coordinates, his jaw set. "Aye, but Captain, if they track our warp signature." "They will," she cut in, voice steady. "That's why we make it count." The ship shuddered into the first micro-jump, reality folding around them in a blink. Alarms blared immediately on exit. Proximity alert. A scout drone, sleek and alien, materialized on the flank, its sensors probing like invisible fingers. "Evade!" Elena snapped. Helm Officer Kira yanked the stick, the Resolute twisting in a barrel roll that pressed them into their seats. The drone fired a warning pulse, grazing the shields with a sizzle of energy. Marcus returned fire, phasers lancing out in precise bursts. The drone shattered into glittering fragments, but the damage was done. A faint warp trail lingered, a breadcrumb for the hunters. Lila's voice again, urgent now. "Incoming transmission from engineering. Captain, we've got a coolant leak in the port nacelle. If it vents, we're blind in hyperspace." Elena's fists clenched. They couldn't stop. Momentum was their only ally. Patch it with the emergency seals. Use the spare hull plating if you have to, jury-rig the damn thing. Down in the bowels of the ship, Lila moved like a shadow amid the sparking conduits, her toolkit clanging against bulkheads. Sweat stung her eyes as she pried open an access panel, steam hissing out in acrid clouds. The leak was bad, a hairline fracture spiderwebbing across the manifold, green coolant spraying in erratic jets. She slapped a sealant patch over it, but it bubbled and peeled under pressure. "Need more," she muttered, grabbing a length of flexible conduit from the stores. Improvising, she siphoned power from a non-essential relay, the galley recyclers could wait, and rerouted it to pressurize the seal. Her hands shook from the vibration, but the spray slowed, then stopped, a temporary fix born of grit and guesswork. On the bridge, the second microjump complete, tension coiled tighter. Kira's voice broke the silence. Captain, long-range sensors picking up heat signatures. 3, no, 5 vessels. Closing fast. Elena's mind flashed to the outposts. Families huddled in prefab domes counting on them. The Resolute had danced this dance before, outgunning odds with sheer human stubbornness. But the scars were adding up. Last run's hull breach still echoed in her nightmares. Armed torpedoes, she said, rising to her full height.
We're not running blind.
We hit them first. Marcus's console lit up with targeting locks, his grin fierce despite the odds. Torpedoes hot. Firing on your mark. The ship accelerated into the void, a wounded predator turning to face the pack. Alarms wailed as the enemy formation tightened, their weapons charging with a predatory hum. Elena's pulse thrummed in her ears. Mark. Torpedoes streaked away, painting the black with fire trails. The lead enemy ship erupted in a silent bloom, debris scattering like shattered glass. But the others pressed on, undeterred, their beams slicing through space toward the Resolute. Shields buckled under the barrage, the ship groaning in protest. A direct hit rocked them, sparks flying from overloaded panels. Kira fought the helm, stabilizing the yaw. We've lost lateral thrusters. Elena braced as another volley hammered home. The view screen flickered, static washing over the stars. In that moment, doubt flickered. Had they pushed too far? Lila burst onto the bridge, face smudged with coolant, toolkit still in hand. Nacelle's stable, for now, but we need to vent the excess heat or it'll cook us from inside. Elena's eyes met hers, a silent pact forming. Do it. Use the cargo bay vents. It'll expose the supplies, but better that than nothing. Lila nodded, already moving. As she worked, the battle raged. Marcus weaved phaser fire through the chaos, clipping a second foe, but the remaining 3 closed like wolves. One strafed past, its wake shearing off a sensor array with a metallic screech. Their boarding range, Marcus warned. Elena drew her. Elena gripped her sidearm tighter, the cool metal grounding her as the boarding alert screamed through the bridge. Red lights pulsed, casting jagged shadows across the consoles. She glanced at Marcus, who had already unstrapped, his fingers flying over the emergency lockdown sequence. Seal the outer hatches, she ordered, voice steady despite the thunder of impacts rattling the deck. Lila, how long until those vents are clear? From the intercom, Lila's response crackled, laced with the whine of tools. 2 minutes, Captain. The cargo bay's a mess, rations spilling everywhere, but the heat's channeling out. Just hold them off. The view screen showed the enemy shuttle latching on like a parasite, its docking tube extending with a hiss of pressurized air. 3 figures in sleek, iridescent armor breached the hull, plasma cutters slicing through the reinforced alloy. Elena's mind raced. The Kragari boarding parties were relentless, their tech designed to overwhelm isolated ships like theirs. But the Endurance wasn't isolated anymore, not with the absorbed energy building in their core. Marcus fired a burst from the auxiliary turret controls, the phasers lancing out to graze the tube. That'll slow them, but not stop. We got maybe 30 seconds before they're inside. Elena nodded, signaling the 2 security ensigns who'd rushed in behind her. Young but sharp. Rico with his quick reflexes, Sana with her unerring aim. Form up. We meet them at the airlock. Non-lethal if we can. Stun them, by time for Lila. They moved as one, boots magnetized to the tilting deck, the ship groaning under another salvo from the pursuing fighters. The corridor to the airlock was a narrow gauntlet. Emergency bulkheads half deployed, sparks flying from severed conduits. Elena led, phaser set to wide beam, heart pounding with the calculated risk. Absorbing the Kragari's fire had been their gambit, human stubbornness turning enemy weapons against them. But if the boarders reached the engine room, it was over. A clang echoed ahead, the airlock cycling open with a rush of recycled air. The first Kragari emerged, taller than expected, its armor humming with energy fields. It raised a rifle, but Rico was faster, tackling it with a shoulder charge that sent both crashing into the wall. The alien's weapon skittered away, discharging harmlessly into the grating. Cover! Elena shouted, diving behind a support strut as the second boarder fired, the bolt scorching the bulkhead inches from her head. Sana returned fire, her stun pulse hitting true. The figure slumped, twitching. The third was smarter, rolling low and activating a shield projector that shimmered like oil on water. It advanced, forcing them back step by step. Marcus, who'd circled wide, flanked it from an access panel, slamming a hydraulic wrench down on the device. Sparks erupted. The shield flickered out. Elena finished it with a point-blank shot. Panting, they secured the intruders, zip ties from the emergency kit binding limbs that felt unnaturally resilient. Bridge airlock secure, Elena reported, wiping sweat from her brow. But they're adapting fast. What's our status? Lila's voice cut in, triumphant amid the hum of stabilizing systems. Vents are live. Core temp dropping. We've got a window. But the cargo bay's exposed. If those fighters strafe us now... The ship lurched as Marcus evaded another pass, the absorbed energy now a volatile reservoir in their modified reactors. Elena straightened, a grim smile forming. It was time to flip the script. Marcus, plot a course straight through their formation. Lila, prepare the release sequence. We're not just surviving, we're ending this. As the Endurance surged forward, engines flaring with borrowed fury, the Kragari fleet loomed larger on the view screen. Doubt lingered in the back of Elena's mind, but she pushed it down. Humanity didn't yield. It endured, then struck back. The alarms blared sharper now, a staccato rhythm that matched the pounding in Elena's chest as the Endurance barreled toward the Kragari line. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets, their plasma bolts glancing off the reinforced hull, each impact feeding the reactors, a deliberate harvest of destruction turned to fuel. They're tightening the net, Marcus growled, fingers dancing over the controls. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his voice stayed steady. The cautious pilot giving way to the man who'd flown through asteroid storms without flinching. 15 seconds to breach. If we miscalculate the vector, we won't. Elena cut him off, her eyes locked on the view screen where the enemy capital ship dominated the starfield, its broadsides glowing with charged arrays. She felt the ship's hum deepen, a living pulse from the absorbed onslaught, but the cargo bay breach gnawed at her, exposed wiring, potential cascade failure if they took one solid hit there. Lila's hands flew across her console, rerouting power flows with the precision of a surgeon, release sequence at 80%. The capacitors are holding, but it's like juggling fireballs. One surge too many and we cook from the inside. Her witty edge had dulled under the strain, replaced by the grim focus of someone who'd jury-rigged half the ship's defenses from scrap. The first fighter clipped past, its wake rattling the deck. Elena braced as inertial dampeners strained, the ship groaning under the G-forces. Marcus, evasive weave, by Lila the last 20%. He nodded, yanking the yoke. The Endurance twisted, a dancer in the void, dodging a fresh volley that lit the darkness in azure streaks. But the Kragari weren't firing blindly anymore. Their patterns tightened, predicting the human ship's arc, forcing Marcus into shallower maneuvers. A bolt grazed the aft shield and the lights flickered, cargo bay integrity dropping to critical. Bay's venting atmosphere, Lila reported, her voice tight. Patching with emergency seals, but if they target it again... Elena's mind raced, the doubt she'd buried resurfacing like ice cracking under pressure. The plan had been bold: absorb their fury, consolidate it, then unleash a counterwave to shatter their formation. But up close, the fleet's scale dwarfed them, a wall of armored behemoths, each one a testament to alien might. Humanity's grit had carried them this far, but was it enough against numbers like these? Adjust the release, Elena said suddenly, the idea crystallizing amid the chaos. Focus it forward, not omnidirectional. Turn us into a spearhead. Punch through the capital ship's weak point, the dorsal vents we scanned earlier. Lila paused, calculations flickering across her display. It'll overload the forward arrays. We might lose the nose entirely. Better than losing everything. Elena met her gaze, the bridge's red emergency lights casting stark shadows on their faces. Camaraderie bound them now, forged in the fire of shared desperation. No speeches, just the quiet resolve of people who'd bet their lives on each other. Marcus banked hard, threading between two interceptors. Coming up on the line. 10 seconds. The view screen filled with the enemy behemoth, its vents yawning like maws. Lila's fingers hammered the final commands. Sequence primed. On your mark, Elena. Now. The word was a release valve. The Endurance shuddered as the energy erupted, a torrent of redirected plasma and kinetic fury lancing from the bow. It struck true, slamming into the capital ship's vents with a brilliance that outshone the stars. Explosions rippled across the Kragari hull, secondary blasts tearing through adjacent fighters in a chain reaction of debris and fire. But the recoil hit hard. The ship bucked, forward shields collapsing in a shower of sparks. Alarms wailed anew, hull breaches propagating, the cargo bay finally giving way. Atmosphere howled into the void, and Elena tasted blood from where she'd bitten her lip. "They're scattering," Marcus said, awe threading his caution. The fleet fractured, capital ship listing, its formation crumbling under the improvised strike. Lila slumped slightly, wiping her brow. "We did it. But we're bleeding air. Repairs needed yesterday." Elena exhaled, the weight of survival settling unevenly. The cost lingered in the flickering lights and the distant rumble of failing systems, a reminder that triumph came scarred. Yet as the Endurance limped clear of the wreckage, she straightened. They pressed on. Elena gripped the armrest as the Endurance shuddered through another micro-correction, its engines whining in protest. The debris field from the shattered fleet stretched like a graveyard in the viewscreen, silent now except for the occasional ping of stray particles against the hull. Marcus hunched over the nav console, fingers flying across the flickering holograph, plotting their escape vector toward the outer colonies. "We've got a window," he muttered, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "But if that capital ship's backup reactors go critical, it'll turn this sector into a plasma storm." Lila, ever the engineer, didn't look up from her jury-rigged panel in the corner, sparks flying as she fused a conduit back to life. "Plasma storm's the least of it. Main drive's at 42%. We push too hard and we fragment like they did." She paused, twisting a wrench with deliberate force, the metallic clang echoing in the dim bridge. Her caution had saved them before, back when the first probes hit. But now it felt like a chain, pulling them toward inevitable drift. Elena nodded, tasting the metallic tang of recycled air laced with ozone. The bleeding atmosphere had stabilized, but the cold seeped in from the breached bays, a reminder of how thin their margin was. "We can't drift. Sol's defenses are counting on resupply. Those orbital arrays won't hold without our payloads." She unstrapped, moving to the central TAC display where red icons blinked warnings, structural integrity at 67%, life support flickering. The alien fleet's ambush had been relentless, their energy lances designed to overwhelm shields and waves, but humanity's gambit, absorbing the hits into massive capacitor banks hidden in Earth's magnetosphere, had turned the tide. Now the release was coming, a counterstrike that would light up the system like a supernova if they could just deliver the triggering codes. A proximity alert blared, sharp and insistent. Marcus swiveled. Scouts, 3 of them, peeling off from the remnants. They're vectoring in, fast. The viewscreen zoomed, revealing sleek predatory shapes cutting through the wreckage, their hulls iridescent under the distant sun, not the heavy hitters but nimble enough to harass to finish what the fleet started. "Evade pattern Delta," Elena ordered, her voice cutting through the rising hum of alarms. Brave in the face of it she always was, the one who charged the boarding tubes during the initial incursion, rallying the crew when panic clawed at the bulkheads. But even she felt the grit of uncertainty now, the way the ship listed slightly under failing gyros. Marcus punched the commands, the Endurance rolling hard, inertial dampers straining. G-forces pressed them into seats, a low groan rippling through the deck plates. Lila braced against her station, tools scattering. "That's not evasion, that's a barrel roll into their fire arc. Adjust thrust on port nacelles." "Can't!" Marcus shot back, terse, his wit buried under the pressure. "They're offline. Improvise or die." The first scout's beam grazed them, a searing line that lit the bridge in crimson. Consoles sparked and Elena smelled burning insulation. "Shields at 12%, Lila reported, her fingers a blur as she rerouted power. The ship bucked, a near miss shearing off a sensor array and a burst of vaporized metal. They were blind on that flank now, the scouts closing like wolves on a wounded beast. Elena's mind raced, piecing together fragments from the briefings. The alien scouts relied on phased arrays for targeting. Disrupt that and they'd fire wild. "Marcus, vent the auxiliary tanks, make us a decoy plume." Lila cross-linked the cargo bay vents to the point defense grid. "Turn the debris into shrapnel." Lila's eyes widened, but she moved without question, slamming overrides. "You're turning our guts inside out. If this backfires..." "It won't." Elena's tone brooked no argument, her caution yielding to the spark of human grit that had kept them alive this long. The Endurance belched a cloud of ionized gas and loose wreckage. Propelled by explosive decompression, the scouts veered, their beams lancing through the fog but missing the mark. Then Lila triggered the grid, rapid-fire pulses magnetizing the debris into a swirling storm of projectiles. One scout crumpled, its hull punctured like foil. The second twisted away, but the third pressed on, too close. Impact rocked them, a secondary explosion from the breached bay. Lights dimmed to emergency red, and Elena tasted blood again. A fresh cut from the jolt. "Status," she barked. "Scouts down," Marcus said, exhaling. "But we're venting plasma now, drives compromised." Lila wiped grime from her face, the weight of the fix settling. "We can limp to the relay point. But the release, Earth's holding the charge, but not forever." Elena stared at the view screen, the system's curve beckoning. The aliens thought they had humanity cornered, absorbing blow after blow until the core cracked. But the counter was primed. Every absorbed attack funneled into a single devastating pulse. They just had to survive to arm it. As the Endurance pushed forward, scarred but unbowed, Elena allowed a grim smile. The stars ahead burned brighter, promising release. Elena gripped the armrests of her command chair, the metal cool and unyielding under her palms. The Endurance shuddered as another alien probe skimmed their hull, its energy discharge harmlessly dissipating into the ship's adaptive shields. Marcus hunched over his console, fingers flying across the flickering readouts. "Shields at 70%. They're testing us, probing for weaknesses." "Keep the absorption cycle running," Elena ordered, her voice steady despite the ache in her jaw from clenching it. Lila, in engineering, patched through from below decks, her face smeared with lubricant and resolve. "Core's stable, but the buildup is straining the conduits. One more direct hit and we might overload before we reach the relay." The bridge hummed with the low thrum of overtaxed systems, the air thick with the scent of ozone. Outside, the alien fleet loomed, a constellation of sleek predatory vessels, their hulls iridescent under the starlight. They had come expecting a swift purge of this upstart human world, their weapons designed to shatter civilizations in a single barrage. But Earth had learned, adapted. Every blast they fired was caught, stored, converted into a weapon of their own making. "Relay point in 10 minutes, Marcus announced, his cautious nature shining through in the precise count. He glanced at Elena, eyes narrowing. "If we arm the pulse too early, we risk feedback into our own systems." Elena nodded, her brave resolve a quiet fire. And too late, they glassed the planet. "We wait for the signal." She didn't need to say it, they all knew the stakes. Billions below, families huddled in bunkers counting on this scarred frigate to turn the tide. A sudden alarm blared, red lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Lila's voice crackled over the comm. "Incoming salvo." 3 cruisers locking on, energy signatures off the charts. The ship bucked as the first wave struck, shields flaring brilliant blue. Helena braced, tasting the metallic tang of fear sweat on her lips. "Evasive pattern delta. Divert auxiliary power to absorption relays." Marcus complied without hesitation, his witty edge dulled by focus. "They're not holding back this time. Looks like they've figured out we're not just dodging." The view screen filled with the onslaught, beams of plasma lancing through the void, each one slamming into the Endurance like a hammer on anvil. The ship groaned, bulkheads creaking but held. Energy poured in, funneled deep into the core where Earth's ingenuity waited. A massive capacitor array, jury-rigged from mining rigs and fusion plants, designed to hold until it couldn't. Lila shouted from engineering. "Conduits heating critical. We can't take another full barrage." Elena's mind raced, the weight of command pressing down. An early plan had been to slip past the fleet undetected, but that backfired when a scout jammed their stealth field. Now they were exposed, the aliens closing in like wolves on a wounded prey. She slammed her fist on the console. "Marcus, reroute the excess charge to forward emitters. Give them a taste, blind their sensors without full release." He paused, brow furrowing, then grinned faintly. "Clever. Overloading their targeting arrays. Risky, but it'll buy us distance." "Do it!" The order hung in the air, terse and final. As the ship twisted through the debris field, Marcus executed the maneuver. A burst of stored energy erupted from the bow, not the full pulse but enough to light up the void in a dazzling arc. The lead alien cruiser veered wildly, its sensors fried, while the others scattered in confusion. Elena watched the scopes, breath held. The relay point neared. The innocuous asteroid station humanity had seeded years ago with dormant tech. But the cost mounted. A secondary explosion rocked the Endurance, venting atmosphere from a midsection deck. Alarms wailed for the lost crew, faces Elena knew from briefings. 5 minutes, Lila reported, her voice edged with grit. "We're leaking coolant, but the core's primed. Just hold them off." The aliens regrouped, their formation tightening undeterred. Another probe fired, grazing the shields and sending sparks across the bridge. Elena wiped a trickle of blood from her temple, undaunted. They were close now, the promise of release tangible. In that moment, as the stars wheeled and the ship fought for every meter, Elena felt the camaraderie bind them tighter than any hull. Humans didn't break. They bent, absorbed, and struck back harder. The fleet loomed larger, but the relay beacon flickered to life on the screen. Almost there. Elena gripped the command console, her fingers slick with sweat as the relay beacon's signal pulsed stronger on the tactical display. The alien fleet's lead cruiser loomed like a jagged scar against the void, its weapon arrays charging with a predatory hum that vibrated through the hull. "Lila, status on the core release," she barked, eyes locked on the incoming fire patterns. "Primed and stable, Captain," Lila replied from engineering, her voice cutting through the static like a lifeline. "But if they hit us again, it'll cascade. We need that beacon live now." The bridge shuddered under another barrage, shields flickering down to 20%. Sparks rained from the overhead panels, and Jax, at tactical, cursed under his breath as he rerouted power. "They're adapting, jamming the beacon's uplink. We've got 2 minutes before they overload it." Elena's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of their desperate plan. The ship, the Endurance, had been designed for exploration, not this brutal siege. But humans excelled at turning weakness into weapons. They'd absorbed every hit, every probe, venting non-essential sections to redistribute mass and energy, turning the vessel into a living battery. Now, with the core at critical, it was time to unleash. "Jax, divert auxiliary thrusters to the forward array. Make us a bigger target. Draw their fire here." She pointed to the screen, tracing an erratic path toward the fleet's heart. It was madness, painting a bullseye on themselves, but it would buy seconds. "Aye, Captain," Jack said, his hands flying over the controls. The ship lurched, engines flaring in a wild spiral that pulled every eye on the bridge. Alarms blared as structural integrity dipped, but the maneuver worked. The aliens' formation fractured, their shots scattering like startled birds. Lila's voice crackled over the comm. "Beacon's fighting the jam. I can boost it if you give me a surge from the mains." Elena nodded, even though Lila couldn't see it. "Do it. Pull from life support if you have to. We're not breathing much anyway." The air grew thinner, recyclers whining in protest, but no one complained. Grit bound them, it always had. The lead cruiser fired a killing lance, a beam of coherent plasma that lit the stars. It struck true, shearing through the outer hull and into the mid-decks. Elena felt the deck buck beneath her, heard the screams cut short over the intercom. Good people gone in an instant. Pain twisted in her gut, but she shoved it down. Morning later, surviving now. "Impact confirmed," Jax reported, his face pale but steady. "Shields at 5. Core's holding, but we're venting plasma." "Almost," Elena whispered, watching the beacon's signal claw its way to full strength. The aliens were closing, their hulls bristling with triumph. But they didn't know. They couldn't know what humans carried in their bones, the will to endure, to adapt, to turn agony into ammunition. "Now, Lila," Elena shouted as the signal peaked. A low rumble built through the ship, the absorbed energy coiling like a spring finally released. The core detonated, not in destruction, but in directed fury. Waves of redirected plasma and kinetic force erupted from every scar, every breach, a symphony of counterfire that lit the void in blinding blues and whites. The alien probes vaporized first, then the cruiser's arrays crumpled under the onslaught. Ships bucked and spun, their formations shattering as the Endurance's improvised barrage punched through armor and shields alike. The bridge went silent, save for the hiss of failing systems. On the view screen, the fleet recoiled, trailing debris and fire, their advance halted in chaos. The beacon blazed, broadcasting the coordinates, the warning: Earth's stand, unyielding. Elena slumped against her chair, tasting blood and victory. The cost was etched in the empty stations around her in the flickering lights. But they'd held. Humanity endured.